Welcome to Archery Talk 101 podcast, your guide to better archery skills. We'll bring you the latest tips, tricks, and expert advice, but that's not all. We'll also have interviews with top archers and industry professionals and reviews of the latest gear and equipment and much more. Hi, my name is Rory Canterbury. I'm going to be host today on Archery Talk 101, and we have a special guest with us today. Marcus is on the line, and we're going to hear some good stories today about his hunting career and archery, and going to be a lot of really good show. For those that are want to interact with us, if you join the Archery Talk 101 Facebook group, you'll be able to interact and get the podcast live. Otherwise, you can wait for the podcast to come out on the podcast or on my YouTube channel. Welcome to the show, Marcus.
Thank you much, Roy.
And introduce yourself so everybody gets to know you.
I'm Marcus Dryak. I'm just actually yesterday was my birthday. So yesterday was my birthday. So that was a good deal.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Yep. But yeah, I just, love of archery. I grew up around a little small town up in Niobrara, Nebraska. And just the love of outdoors was something that's in my backyard up there. So that was a very big part of me growing up. My dad, he got into hunting. My cousin was a big time hunter. I did a ton of hunting with my dad, with my cousin. And it just kind of grew from there, I guess.
Yeah. So where are you living now?
I live in Omaha now.
Oh, okay. We're neighbors. I'm in Ithaca.
Yep. But yeah, live down here now. Job brought me down here now. I work at Mutual of Omaha. But then, I always say it kind of pays for my hobbies. That's
Yeah.
I do get out and I don't sit down. Once I'm done with work for the day, I'm out doing something. That's for darn sure. So,
yeah. So what got you started in archery?
Actually, initially I started out with my dad. It was kind of funny, me as a little kid growing up, my number one Christmas list from Santa Claus every single year was to get a BB gun. And just because I wanted to have a BB gun. And my dad, he would go out hunting all the time with a couple buddies. And that was back when we had pheasants, and he pheasant hunted a lot and turkey hunted and deer hunted. But until I got to be, I think maybe 12 years old, I was not allowed to go. I was at home and, I'd see him when he come home and hear the stories and all that stuff from him. But I just, at that time I wasn't old enough to go. And so I stayed at home with that. But then it was about, I don't know, maybe 12 years old. My dad let me go deer hunting with him for the first time. And we went rifle hunting and, he shot a deer and kind of went from there. And I think from an archery perspective, it was probably, I think I was maybe 16 or 17 years old. And my cousin who lived in Lincoln, Gary Kurtzer, he ended up giving me one of his bows and let me use one of his bows. Well, I always thought like where I actually sat rifle hunting, I was kind of watching this draw cut through, just this natural bottleneck between two draws. Yeah. And like, oh my gosh, that would just be perfect place to archery hunt. Well, my cousin ends up giving me a bow, gives me 5 arrows, and okay, here we go. Well, it was a old Bear 2-wheeled bow, no sight on it, just a finger, just fingers and everything like that. And I got 5 arrows. And I go out and I climb up into this oak tree with my dad. We kind of set up nailed a couple boards into this oak tree. And I hunted a few days, and all of a sudden I have this little 4x4, just a little basket rack 4x4 come underneath me. And I shot that deer at about 10 yards. Luckily I got him, I spined him, and he's laying on the ground, and I proceeded to empty the rest of my arrows at him, trying to, finish him off as he's sitting down there as he's on the ground, he can't get away. And I finally ended up climbing down out of the tree, grabbed another arrow that I'd already shot, and ended up finishing him off. But I was just that to me was the ultimate archery experience. And that, something I'll never forget. I still got that deer on the wall. got his horns mounted and stuff, and come home to my dad, and it was like, oh my gosh, look at this giant that I got. And so yeah, it was a cool deal.
Yeah, your first one is always a little, especially your first buck is always a memorable one that you don't forget. And
Yep, that is for sure. So, but yeah, and then that I did deer hunt a lot up at with archery, then up at Niobrara with my dad. And then I ended up moving down here, went to college, and still, during college, I was still, I was limited in somewhat the time that I could actually get away.
right.
So then ended up doing still some rifle hunting, and mostly through college, and had a couple buddies in school that were into archery also, and kind of got into shooting bows a little bit in college. And when I graduated from college, I come down here and had to find new places, new spots and stuff, and ended up, that was back in the day when you could actually knock on doors and actually get permission. I kind of did a goal for myself, was to be within an hour of my house. And I ended up finding a farmer down by Plattsmouth that allowed me to hunt on his place. He's got, had a little bit of, deer woods down there and everything, and hunted down there for, I think, maybe 2 years before I finally got, I ended up finally getting a deer down there, and it ended up making Pope and Young.
Oh, that's
so
good.
that was my biggest deer ever, and was one of those things, is I was just unbelievably excited and ecstatic about that, and just kind of I've fostered that relationship since then, and I've been down there for 30 years now. Still same property for 30 years. The gentleman that owned it, now his daughter and son-in-law own the ground now, and I just still able to get onto the ground down there, and it's still one of the cool places that I've got to hunt down there. So
yeah, and Plattsmouth is pretty nice there. They got some good woods down in that area.
yeah, yep. And then it was kind of interesting from that perspective too. Then from an archery perspective, I got my first Pope and Young deer down there, and was trying to get it scored. And I kind of knew a little bit about scoring, and kind of one of those things is I kind of had an idea of how to do it. I read it and all that stuff. Well, ended up calling around, and just couldn't find anybody really to score it around here in the Omaha area. I had a couple people, and they were like, oh yeah, bring your deer head, and leave it with us, and we'll get at it in a month or so. And I was like, wow, that's this is my trophy, this is my baby.
Right.
Not going to leave this with anybody, and all this stuff. Well, so finally ended up calling Pope and Young, and got a hold of them, Glenn Heisey up in Chatfield, Minnesota. And he put me in contact with the gentleman in Fremont. So I ended up going over there and talking to Jim, a Pope and Young scorer over there in Fremont. And this Jim Newman, we got to be pretty good friends. And my gosh, the next year, I ended up lucking out and getting another Pope and Young deer the next year. A nice 5x5 the next year. So, I called Jim up and asked him about scoring a deer, and yeah, come on over. And so we talked about it, and, about the deer, and kind of, he showed me some things, and he kind of mentioned to me, he goes, well, have you ever thought about scoring for Pope and Young? I'm like, well, no, not really. But I mean, I like to do this and hear the stories and all this stuff. And he's like, well, he says, well, we could submit an application and all this stuff. He said, there's no guarantees. He says it could take, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, or 10 years before you're ever, potentially considered to score for Pope and Young, because they, at that point in time, 25 years ago, they didn't take a lot of scores at that time.
Yeah.
And so I put in an application in January, and Jim was my sponsor. And I'll be gosh darn, in April, I ended up getting a call from Pope and Young that I could come up to Chatfield, Minnesota, and take the scoring class. So
It was quick.
yeah, exactly. So I got into scoring, all of the stuff from the Pope and Young perspective. Got the class, met Glenn, and and his son Kevin and all this stuff, up there in Minnesota. And we had a great time up there. I met, some really cool people from Alaska and scorers from, all around the country. There were 16 of us there. And that's just, got to be real good friends with Ricky Kruger then in Fremont, also a big scorer, and just, it's kind of went from there. I was able to also score in the 31st biannual meeting here that was in Omaha a few years ago. I got to score I think we had 104 of the largest animals in the country then. So yeah, it was that's a very, very cool thing. So
yeah, that's the interesting part here, all the hunting stories and everything else. And that's what's so cool about the podcast is I get to hear all these hunting stories from the new archer that is just starting out to the guy that's been shooting archery for 60, 70 years to semi-pros, pros, and Olympic archers. It just everybody's story is it's just so different and so cool to listen to them.
Yeah, it has been just a very cool thing. I mean, it's when I score deer, I bring them down to my basement. I've got a 7-foot alligator gar on the wall. I've got mule deer and whitetails and walleye and other deer all over the wall. I've got hogs down there and stuff, and it's kind of my little man cave. And people come over and we score the deer, and I just love to listen to their stories. It's something. I've scored 80-inch deer that people have brought to my house, and I've scored 250-inch deer that people have brought over, and it's every story is cool to listen to everybody, and the different things like that. It's a really neat thing to be able to hear all their stories.
Yeah, it's always interesting stories. All of us that hunt have got different hunting stories. The ultimate one that was just so cool to do, and then the one that was challenging, and the one ones that you just remember. And I know my first year was just a small basket buck, and I'd been hunting for a while, and I think I hunted about 5 years before I finally got a shot at one. I could have had a shot earlier, but I didn't realize I could really have taken the shot, and so good at it. And so this one here, it's like, okay, here's a trail they're going on. It was out of Two Rivers. You know where that's at. But I had to get up 20 feet in a tree to get over the set of bushes to the trail. And that's that field between those two sets of trees.
Okay.
That big grass field. It's all changed now. But so I had to be up that high to get through it. I'm just new. I've got, a fairly new bow, for me anyway, set at 52 pounds, 2117 arrows with 145 grain tip. So it's a pretty heavy arrow, 52 pounds. And I drew back and I shot, and that deer turned. That arrow was hanging almost all the way out of that deer.
Oh, wow.
Almost went past through. Heavy arrow, lightweight.
Of
course, now I'm shooting a little bit lighter arrows and heavier weight. But
yeah,
it was and you could see where it went, but I wanted to blood trail it, in great big tall grass out there. I wanted to try and blood trail it. And it's out there with, he had already found it. It's like, I'm still going to try and follow it with a blood trail because I want to learn how to do it.
Yeah, I have, that is the thing, is I've had some really cool stories and stuff. Like in my background here, I got some mule deer up on the wall here in the background. And actually I shot this mule deer here, the one that's directly above me there. It's actually still in partial velvet. But that deer, I shot out around the Valentine area out there, and this deer. So I go out there, and a lot of times I will sit in glass. I mean, with mule deer out there, there's no trees where I hunt. The pastures are just, they're just little coulees and stuff like that, just little things like that. Well, I end up going out there and I see this buck, and I watched him for 3 days. And, I got him within 80 yards one day. Another day I had him about 100 yards. And the third day, I'm like, okay, this is on Saturday. I got a couple more days to hunt, but I got to start kind of pushing the envelope here a little bit now. And end up that I see the deer, and well, actually I spotted the second biggest buck in the group. There was kind of three of them that were hanging out together. And I spotted the number 2 buck, but I didn't see this bigger deer that, that I had seen the previous couple of days. And I'm like, gosh, they got to be close to each other. They're kind of hanging out together. It was still in October. They were still in their bachelor group, still in October. Yeah. And I end up finally kind of sneaking down through the field and ended up spotting the number 2 buck. And I saw him go up, and he was kind of working behind this little hill, and a lot of the area was blocked. I couldn't see it. Just kind of, there was a pretty big deep cut in there. And I thought, you know what? Maybe if I'm just going to sneak up there and see if I can peek over that hill and see if I can see any other deer that are up there, because they laying in the shade there, laying out of the sun. And sure enough, I sneak about a mile through the pasture, get down there, climb up over this hill. And all of a sudden I see this buck and he is actually bedded down, and he is bedded down facing exactly directly at me.
Oh.
I mean, I'm looking up over this hill at about 60 yards, and he is exactly facing directly at me. Well, the other buck, the number 2 buck, he was kind of feeding along still on that side hill, and they're still 60, 70 yards away. And he ends up finally kind of just walking up the hill and goes up and beds up just a little further up into this cut, just a little further. But the deer I was actually looking for was bedded right there in front of me. He's 60 yards away. So I'm like, okay, let's see what we can do. And I got a few yuccas in front of me and stuff. So I belly crawl about an hour's worth of belly crawl, and I make it about 20 yards. And I get to like 40 yards away, and I range find it this deer about 1,000 times. I got my bow laying down in front of me. I'm sitting kind of side saddle on this hillside, trying to hide behind a couple of yuccas and not pick my head up, just full camouflage, kind of one of them deal, trying to blend into this hill. And this deer is just constantly watching me. Yeah, I mean, it's not watching me, but he's looking directly at me. If I make any move wrong, this deer is going to see me. And I've got all the grass cleared out where my bow's laying and everything like this, because I'm just sitting on the ground, kind of side saddle on the ground, and just starting to cramp up and just everything like that. And I'm shooting 70-pound bow, so it's not going to be one of those fun things to draw sitting down on the ground. But I'm sitting there and I'm just kind of watching, and I kept constantly watching with binoculars, peeking through the yuccas, thinking, just close your eyes, just for a minute, just close your eyes and give me just that opportunity that I can, clip on and draw and get him shot while he's laying right there in his bed. And I proceed to do this. It's for probably about 2 hours. And he just never looks down. He never turns his head really. He just constantly just kind of sitting there, just chilling, no big deal, just kind of sitting there watching. And all of a sudden, I must have got just peaked up a little bit too high. And this deer kind of snaps his head to the left and to the right. And he just kind of like that. And I'm like, oh, the deal's up now. And I reached for my bow. I grabbed my bow, clipped my release on. And as I did that, that deer stood up. And he stood up and looked like where that other deer had walked up the hill. He looks up there, looks back at me, and I was already at full draw. And about that time, I let the arrow go. Well, when I let the arrow go, the deer, he was aware. He saw me, and he ducked the string. Well, the arrow's on its way already, and I ended up catching him above the spine in both of the back straps. And this, the deer, the arrow goes right through him. The deer spins and turns and starts to run. So Roy, this deer, now I'm watching this on this hillside. He's running across the pasture that is 2 miles wide and 4 miles long. This, open, big, wide open pasture. And this deer's taken off, and I'm watching him with binoculars, and there is a pretty good amount of blood coming out of on the top of his back. It's running down both sides of him on his back as he's running. And I'm like, I know that there's a couple arteries that, lay across the backstrap there and everything. And so I'm kind of like, okay, there's a chance. And he runs out about 300 yards and is standing out about 300 yards from me. And this deer starts jumping and mule kicking and just twisting, and literally looks like it's a bucking bull out there in the middle of this grass. This grass is, that big red buffalo grass out there, Indian
Yeah.
grass out there. It's, 3 feet tall or whatever. And this deer is just twisting and bucking and like unbelievable. I'm like, well, he kind of, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, he felt that, sting on his back now, and he feels that. So he's, kind of like trying to get a monkey off his back or whatever, he's just kind of, feeling it. And I proceeded to watch, and all of a sudden this deer just all of a sudden breaks into a run again. And he runs out about another 300 or 400 yards. And same deal is in grass that's, waist high on him, or, halfway up the deer. And he starts doing the same thing again, Roy. And I'm like, what is this deer doing?
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, I'm watching with binoculars, and he's about 600-700 yards out now, probably from me. And all of a sudden, Roy, I see this coyote jump up at this deer. And this deer evidently had, when he was running across that open meadow, with all that tall grass, he must have literally, the odds, he must have stepped on a coyote almost. And this coyote is now, it's survival of the fittest. It's right. What's in this coyote smells his next meal here now, and he thinks that he can take this mule deer down. Well, it's just insane. I am watching this, and this deer is hooking this coyote and twisting and turning and fighting this coyote, but still bleeding. And so I called my buddy and my dad. I called Clint, I called my dad, and I'm like, you guys will not believe this. This deer is out there fighting this coyote that I just shot. And, it's one of those things, I'm like, holy crap. And Clint's like, oh my gosh, and I'm thinking to myself, that coyote is now helping me, with this deer, because this deer could keep running. And it ends up that this deer is, twisting and fighting and rolling around and everything like this. And this coyote is trying to bring this deer down. And this coyote, jumps at the deer would hook it with its horns. He'd throw the coyote would hit the ground. And, I couldn't see everything from the ground, but as this coyote would jump, I could see it. And he was trying to constantly get around that deer. And, my dad's thinking, oh my gosh, you better go scare that coyote away. He's going to ruin your deer or whatever. And I'm like, no, that coyote is helping me, now.
Yeah.
I mean, the blood pressure, that deer, the adrenaline that's keeping the deer bleeding, and keeping him in a spot. And I'll be son of a gun, about 20 minutes, that coyote finally grabs that deer and pulls that deer down. And I'm just like, I'm watching this. I'm just, absolutely amazed. And pretty soon, all of a sudden, that deer gets up again and starts throwing that coyote around again. Well, that coyote got the best of him again. He's just losing a little more blood, and ends up bringing him down one more time, and ends up that pretty soon I saw the deer's head go down, and I picked a fence post out there and walked a straight line out there, and ended up walking right up onto that coyote and that deer. And, of course, then the coyote, he takes off right away.
Yeah.
But just in that short amount of time, that coyote had already, had taken a little chunk out of the hind quarter that he had already, had taken a chunk out of that hind quarter already. But literally the coyote actually helped, me recover that deer, just from the perspective that it, preoccupied the deer, kept the deer, the heart rate going, the deer bleeding, all of that stuff. It just absolutely incredible, to see something like that in the wild like that was just absolutely amazing. It was like something you see on Discovery Channel, or the Animal Planet or something like that, So.
Yeah, that's amazing to get something like that and
Yeah.
see that going on. And it makes you just realize that how many deer coyotes will take.
Yes.
If it
Yep.
hadn't been that big of a buck,
Yes.
a little fawn or a smaller deer, it would have been so much fighting. And if the deer hadn't been hurt, probably wouldn't even,
Yeah.
had much of a chance.
I have watched so many coyotes out there walk right by deer that are bedded, or deer that are, just feeding in the fields and stuff, in the alfalfa fields out there. The coyotes will walk through them. The deer will look through them. They're like, the deer are not worried at all. A healthy, big, mature deer like that, they're not worried at all about those coyotes. But that coyote evidently smelled the blood and just figured that it was a, big enough coyote that he could take that deer down, and he did not quit. I mean, and I still say, with the amount of blood that was coming out of the deer, I would have eventually, I could watch it for miles. I could watch it for 2 or 3 miles. And I think eventually the deer would have probably laid down, and I would have been able to find it. It's just that the deer was aware when I shot the bow. He ducked the string right away. It was a 40-yard shot. He had a little bit of time to duck that string. I still think I would have probably found the deer, but just to see that, and that coyote, it was just absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. So
yeah, that's a cool story. That it's stories like this that's really cool to listen to. Everybody has different ones, and that was amazing. I imagine that's probably your most exciting hunt.
Definitely one of the craziest, most exciting. Just you tell people, and they're like, "There's no way." I'm like, I am serious. You could not make something like that up. It's absolutely, you couldn't make something like that up. It's just crazy.
Yeah, that's, now those of us that got out there in the wild, and we bow hunt or hunt in general, and that stuff's, okay, I believe it.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, it is just, it's one of those deals. It's survival of the fittest. It's nature, and I always tell people too, with being an archery hunter too, it's, not every single shot is absolutely perfect for an archer. If people tell you they've never lost a deer, they've never made a bad shot, they've never had, a questionable situation or something, I says, well, then you haven't archery hunted long enough, because I said it happens to the best of us. I don't care if you're an Olympic archer, or the guy who shoots 1,000 arrows a day. It's out in the wild. Things happen, and just it's we all do our best, and we do our due diligence, and with ethical hunting and recovery and everything like that. And it's just that stuff happens. So
Rich Porter from the group says, "Happy birthday, man! You make me feel old."
Yeah. Rich and I became really good friends down here in Omaha, just from on the bow fishing side of things. I do youth bow fishing mentor program also with Rich. We've done that several years. He's now building a new boat. I built a new boat 3 years ago. Well, this is my third season with it, like 2 years ago, actually. And so, we've met and done a lot of stuff from a bow fishing perspective. And actually, I will be doing a thing with the youth, the Nebraska Game and Parks, with the youth mentor program, July 25th. If any of the people are on here and are watching, we'll be down at Bellevue, and we'll be doing it's on the Nebraska Game and Parks website. We'll be doing a youth fishing mentor program down there. And I will be bringing my boat actually down to the event, and have the platform up on it, and bring my bows and all that stuff to talk some youth bow fishing also.
That's a good thing. Get the kids into it, give them something to do, and actually bow fish for fish instead of bow fish on the Wii or whatever it is they're playing, nowadays.
Yep, that is the thing. We do. Yeah, I get out, do a lot of bow fishing. We get to Texas every year. I have with the mounts I have here in my living room and the ones in my basement, I tell everybody I have a very understanding wife. I think Rich would definitely second that, because I in my basement, I have a 7'8" alligator gar mounted on my wall in my basement. It goes, people talk about putting something above the mantle of their fireplace. This is the entire mantle of my fireplace. It goes the entire length of my fireplace in my basement.
That's a
So
big one.
it, yeah, people come in the house, they see the deer in the entryway, they're like, oh wow, big mule deer, big white tails, this, that, the other thing. And then we go downstairs and they're like, oh my gosh, that thing is enormous, you know, and it is an impressive fish, that's for sure. So,
Where
but yeah,
did you get that one at?
I got that down in Texas. We go down south of Dallas, down in Texas, down there. But yeah, it's pretty amazing. We started doing this trip. My buddy got married, and he got married down in San Antonio. And I was in the wedding, so I told my wife, and my girls were little at the time. This was like 13 years ago. And I says, well, we're going down to Texas. I says, I've never shot alligator gar with my bow. It's always kind of been a bucket list thing. I have a gentleman here in town that I scored a deer for, who kind of got me interested in it, Verlin Veldhaus. He done some archery stuff or some bow fishing down in Texas with a guide. And so I started doing some research and found a couple lakes down there and rivers and stuff like that to go on. And told the wife, I says, you know what, we're driving all the way to Texas for a week. We're going to pull my boat down there too. And he's like, okay, I guess so. And so we hooked the boat up and away we went, and ended up that we've been doing it ever since now for 13 years. We saw some just amazing fish down there. It took us about 3 years to do it, to actually figure out what we were doing. But yeah, now we've kind of figured it out, and it's a very cool thing to have the opportunity to get one of these alligator gar down there. That is something that has changed immensely from when we first started doing this 13 years ago. The alligator gar, when we first went down there, the alligator gar they were a trash fish. Nobody liked them down there. Everybody wanted to get rid of them, shoot as many as you could, shoot as many as you wanted to, throw them away, throw them on the banks. They hated those fish down there. They said they ate all their fish in the rivers and the lakes and stuff because they're so big. I mean, it was nothing for a fish that size that I got to have a 10-pound buffalo or carp in its belly. Well, after, with the Game and Parks, the Texas Department of Wildlife and stuff, they figured out that these alligator gar they're not so much a big game fish eater. They're not chasing the bass and stuff like that. They are in the shallows, in the murkier water, the dirtier stuff. They eat carp and buffalo, and they eat a lot of the trash fish and the rough fish. So things have changed down there, and it went from like they said, the first year, shoot as many alligator gar as you wanted to. Then it was one fish per person per day to do it down there. And now in some of the rivers, or in one of the rivers down there, the Trinity River, you apply for a tag now, and they give away, I think it's like 300 tags or a couple hundred tags they give away. But that allows you to then get one fish in that river the entire year. And so if you do not have a tag, you can't get any of the alligator gar. You can't shoot any alligator gar out of that river unless they're smaller than 48 inches. They have an actual size limit on it that they're trying to protect the larger fish. So you can shoot, buffalo, carp, needle-nose gar, anything like that, or smaller alligator gar, not just the big ones. Now that's in one of the rivers, the Trinity River, but then in the lakes down there, and the rest of the rivers, like the Brazos, the Sabine, and some of those rivers that are down there. And then you've got lakes like Choke and Falcon and different lakes down there. It's still one fish per person per day then in those lakes. But there is now a reporting system. They want to track how many alligator gar are being harvested down there, whether it be by hook and line or whether it be by archery. So yeah, things have, the alligator gar fishing down in Texas has really, really changed a lot over the last 10 or 15 years down there. But
now that's quite a change. I know
yes,
deer here in Nebraska, when I was first starting it, you got 2 tags, period. That was it.
Yep.
Whether it was 2 rifle tags, 2 muzzleloader tags, 2 archery tags, it was 2, period. And then
Mhm.
for a while, it's like, okay, we have the ammo list, season choice, as many as you want.
Mhm.
And then now they still have those tags, but they only issue so many of them. So,
Yes.
but you can still get more than one, but at least now it's a little bit better than it was when I first started, 2 and that's it.
Yep. Well, and that was the thing too, is that like today, I mean, we eat so much wild game now. I mean, at my house, my daughters they grew up eating deer and fish and pheasants and turkeys and everything like that. They that's what they prefer now. That is, they don't like to go buy hamburger from the store. We grind 100 and some pounds of hamburger every year. We cut steaks, we do jerky, we do, a lot of this stuff ourselves. We do take a little bit to, some of the meat lockers to have summer sausage and that stuff made, but
Yeah.
but we do, with our doe tags. The doe tags are, like you said, not quite unlimited, but almost, to some degree, with river antlerless and some of that stuff there, you're able to get multiple tags. And yeah, it just allows us to extend our season that much longer. You
Yeah.
know, that is one of the other reasons why I think I got into the archery so much more than the rifle season. The rifle season was, I waited all year long for that 1 week out of the year. It was,
Yeah.
you forever and ever. You had 355 days of waiting, for finally to go out there to be able to rifle hunt. And then it's like, oh, a deer comes by, I shot it, and now we're done. I'm like, what? Wait a second. We need to do something to extend this. I love this too much to just have this to be a one and done and quick and all that stuff. It's like, let me get into the archery stand and let me see some of this cool stuff out of the archery stand, get up and close and personal with those deer and the owls and the mice and turkeys, everything else that's out there in the woods. It's unbelievable what people don't realize is happening out there in the woods.
Oh yeah. And archers are about the only ones that's going to see most of that, because we're the only ones out there. We're in camo. So most of
Mm-hmm.
the game don't know you're there. We're sitting here, generally pretty much perfectly still most of the time.
Yep.
You got to move once in a while, especially get older, you kind of get stiff. So,
Yep.
but yeah, we're sitting there quiet, and I hear lots of stories, like the squirrel come running up the tree, run across you, or birds come landing on you,
Yep.
or landing in the branches next to you.
Mm-hmm.
They just they don't know what you are.
Yeah, I've had so many owls lately. It seems like the owls, I don't know, it's the camouflage, it's the face camo or the netting or whatever. And I am telling you, it's like I am like attracted. The owls are attracted to me. I have had so many owls fly at me and land next to me, and I'm like, no, get away, get away. I don't want you here. You make me nervous with your big talons and stuff like that. I don't want you next to me here. You make me nervous when you're watching me. It's so much there. So, but yeah, it's, and then the turkey hunting in the springtime. I mean, we get out of the archery, I do some ice fishing, and then we go right into the turkey hunting in the springtime. I have same deal. I started shooting turkeys with a shotgun, you know, 35 years ago, probably. And that was when there weren't many turkeys around. It was
Right.
a big deal to see a flock of turkeys, and to get a turkey, that was something that was a big deal. And now, what our state has done, and everything, our turkeys are all over the place, and they're very plentiful. And, the archery tags, I love getting out there and sitting out there in the woods and having those things come in. And what I always tell people, they're like, oh, so what do you use for turkey hunting? I'm like, well, I use my deer stuff. I use my archery deer equipment. Oh, well, do you use a different broadheads and stuff? I says, no, you would be amazed at shooting 70 pounds, shooting a turkey at 10 yards, wing to wing, and the arrow only going into that turkey 8 or 10 inches into that turkey. It's like shooting a piece of carpet. It just does not, you don't have that solid piece of wall to hit with your arrow to go through the turkey. I mean, there's occasions, yes, arrows do go through turkeys, but I have many times, many more turkeys will stop an arrow versus what a deer will, you know. So, but yeah, it is definitely a lot of fun with the turkey hunting also.
Yeah, I know there's a lot more turkey now. When I was growing up, there's lots of pheasants.
Yes.
You could go
Yeah.
out pheasant hunting and walk fields, and
Mhm.
you'd almost always see pheasants. I quit doing pheasant hunting after you spend all day walking around. You might see one or two, and
Yep.
and then you get walking those fields, and I figure, okay, do I want to do pheasant hunting? I'm going to spend all day, do all this walking, or I can go sit in a tree stand and wait for the deer to come to me and get a whole
That
lot more meat.
that is exactly right. Yeah, I used to pheasant hunt all the time. I had labs, and we used to pheasant hunt every weekend, just religiously. It was go out the weekend and get out with the dog and pheasant hunt again. And it was, yeah, it was. I mean, you go out in the mornings, you were done. You could go out and sit in the tree stand and still archery hunt in the evening. Then, well, I think I ended up hanging up kind of the pheasant hunting side of things was when I ended up having to. We went out, walked about 160 acres of CRP field. We had bought, I think, seven or eight. I think we bought 7 or 8 roosters from a game farm. And so we walked my dog, got my dog all tired the whole day walking through this 80 acre or 160 acres of CRP field. Then we went back just so that she had something fun to do. We went out and got the birds and planted the birds out in the field and let her hunt the birds up in the field just so that she had something to do. And it was like, okay, this is a little bit crazy now. We don't have many pheasants left, and it's time better spent well in the deer stand now. And now my dog, rather than doing pheasant hunting, I've kind of trained her to antler hunt. She will shed hunt.
Oh, that's cool.
So that's a very cool thing. Last year, she finally found her first antler completely by herself. Um, we've seen antlers before. I've seen them on the ground, and I don't point them out. I don't touch them or anything, but I just tell her to get her bone, and she'll look around and it's amazing that those antlers can sit on the ground for months on end, and that still smells different to that dog.
Yeah.
And she'll find them and she'll bring them back to me. And this year we went out, and I'll be son of a gun this year. We're going along, and all of a sudden I turned around and I saw some bones or something off to my right, and I kind of started walking to the right, and all of a sudden here comes my dog come behind me, and she's carrying an antler. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you finally clicked. You finally figured out what you're supposed to do now. So yep, was a really cool thing. Really cool thing. No.
Yeah, it's amazing what those dogs' noses can do. And
Yeah. Yep.
I know there was one time I was out with our dog when we had him. That's back when Game and Parks stocked pheasants one
Oh
year.
yeah. Yep.
And we're walking by, and he sticks his nose in this clump of grass. Nothing comes up. Nothing happens. I said, "Come on, let's go." Next thing, he comes back again a second time, sticking his nose in there. Well, let's go. Next time he sticks his nose, a whole head in there, and pulls out a rooster.
Yep. I
Like,
had some.
it wouldn't
Yeah.
get up.
Yeah. I had a dog initially that I used to keep a spreadsheet that kind of tracked, when we went out, who we went with, who shot the pheasants and all this stuff, kind of where we went, just kind of a little diary of what we did. And I actually had to have a column for my dog, because my dog invariably throughout the year, she would probably catch herself 4 or 5 pheasants throughout the year, that especially later in the year when it got a little colder and they'd sit a little tighter and stuff.
Right.
Try to let you walk by them. You weren't beating her nose. She would end up finding them, and she would still pull you out of that cattails or whatever it was. So, yep. But
Yeah, it's amazing. One time this kid was over, and also he kept jumping up on her. I couldn't, because he normally doesn't do that until he turned around. She had a rooster tail feather in her back pocket.
Oh gosh.
He was going after the rooster tail.
Yep.
Like, oh, that's why he's bothering you. He got
Exactly.
a pheasant on you. He's trying to go find him.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So yeah, but the archery, it's just, I don't know. I think it's something so cool to be able to go out there and, like I say, sit out free, and to sit there and be quiet, not to say anything. I seriously think that, we'd be sometimes our world would be a little bit better place if everybody just had to go outside, shut up for a couple hours, sit there and just watch outdoors and see what the birds are doing, everything around you is doing, and just, you know, kind of decompress, calm down, and all that stuff. I think it's kind of a unbelievable drug. Just like when you do actually shoot a deer and harvest a deer, that adrenaline rush that I get every single time I release an arrow is unbelievable. It's, you can't describe. If you've never done it, you can't describe how you can sit in the tree stand and continue to shake for minutes after you've shot that deer. You know, it's amazing, the adrenaline drug, how
Yeah,
strong that thing when you shoot at a deer or whatever. No.
yeah, it's kind of nice being out there and seeing all the different stuff that goes on. And I remember one time I was out there and I was sitting in a tree and the sun started coming up and the frost started forming, and I'm watching frost form on my bow because it's sitting there
Yep.
hanging there, watching the frost form on all the tree branches. And
Hmm.
then on the way back on Q Street, because I lived in La Vista and out Two Rivers, which
Yep.
is a 30-minute drive from my house to my tree stand. And on
Yep.
the way back on the north side of that road there for a while, there used to be a whole row of evergreen trees.
Okay.
And I'm going back, and this is the morning everything frosted. So I'm going back. All the trees are all frosted. All the evergreen trees all have frost forming on them. It's so cool. Of
Yep. Yep.
course, now
Yeah.
they're all gone. There's houses in there now, but
I know that's the thing, that it's, all this landscape has changed so much. And, the times of just knocking on doors and finding places to hunt, them are the places are tough to come by now. It's fortunately I have some pretty good landowners that I'm able to, work with and help out and do that stuff with, and still able to get on some pretty good deer hunting ground. And so it's, the turkeys, the same deal. I love being outdoors, and as much as I can get outdoors, that's the cool thing. I mean, like right now, I've got 8 trail cameras out there right now. I it's like Christmas morning every morning looking at trail camera pictures and all that stuff. I have as much fun watching the deer on the trail cameras as I almost do out there hunting them, actually. So
yeah, there's some interesting pictures. I've got a property out here we had a bunch of cameras on, and it kind of tells you what time they're coming through. And
yep.
okay, there's one area they're coming through about a half hour before shooting time,
Yep. Yep.
and everything else is middle of the night. So
Yep.
now we got to work on trying to get them lots of coyote pictures, which is
Hmm.
why they're probably not there much except running through at night. So
Yep.
that's a problem we got to take care of and figure out how to get them in the area.
Yep.
And so I knew it's like, okay, no reason to go sitting in a tree stand because they're not coming through there. And
Yeah. It's another funny story. So I don't know, one of my landowners, he's got got a big bean field and stuff. And in the springtime, the February timeframe, the eagles and the snow geese and stuff are migrating through. So I decided, you know what, I'm gonna try to get a couple deer carcasses, just roadkill deer carcasses, and set out in my farmer's field. I asked him, and he's like, "Yeah, that no problem, go ahead." So I'm, trying to find roadkills on the side of the road and pick up roadkills and take out to my field out there. And I've got, what I do is I try to take it out in the middle of nowhere and in the field, set up my camera on a 5-gallon bucket, set a big rock up on there so the 5-gallon bucket wouldn't blow away. And I, try to set this camera, 10, 15 feet away from the deer carcass and see if I could get the bald eagles on the carcass and stuff. And ended up that this thing, it's just unbelievable. I have some pictures, Roy, that are amazing, of bald eagles landing and lifting off and fighting on the deer carcasses, and just incredible pictures of those eagles. But what was interesting is it took, after I put those deer carcasses out there, those eagles probably, I would say maybe 5 days, 4 to 5 days before they felt comfortable to come into that deer carcass.
Oh yeah.
And maybe even because, I don't know, maybe because I had the 5-gallon bucket there and the camera there or something like that. I don't know, but it was like the crows were there immediately. The red-tailed hawks were there immediately. The possum would come at night, but those bald eagles would land. They would land off in the distance and they would sit up in the trees overlooking it. And they just, my landowner's like, oh, I saw 2 bald eagles out there today. You probably got some cool pictures. I'm like, no, I still don't. They haven't come in yet. But once they came into the carcass and figured out, I guess that it was safe or whatever it was, it was funny to see the actual pecking order of those bald eagles. Then they would come in there and they would come in like football players, like, you get off of my carcass, this is mine, and fighting amongst each other and lifting in the air, trying to fight each other. It was just absolutely just incredible. Some of the trail cam pictures that I got of these eagles out there. Made a big album, took it out to my landowner and gave him a big album of it and stuff. He could not believe how good those pictures turned out. And, stuff like that. It's just, for having a deer carcass, just a roadkill deer carcass out in a field. So stuff like that, just pretty amazing.
Yeah, that is amazing when you get those kind of pictures, and it's
Yep.
it's kind of cool what you see sometimes. I know the one camera we had out, I think the deer was basically sniffing the camera because it's going by so close, because it's kind of right on, not too far off the trail, but the one picture had this little white halo around the deer because it was just so close.
Yep.
And it was a night picture, so the infrared was reflecting off of that, and
Yep.
get their noses in there, and
Oh yeah, I've seen like whiskers in my camera and stuff like that. Yeah, you sit there and you go, what is that? Well, what's that? And it's like, oh, that must be something else. It's like you get a picture of a whisker and then another picture of a whisker and then a nose, and then all of a sudden the deer steps away and you get an eyeball looking at you. Like, oh, yep. and even though that so many of the cameras and stuff like now that are, they're no glow cameras, there's no flash to them or anything like that, those deer still know they're there. They still know they're there. They can still either hear the shutter or, whatever, but they're still observant, that they still know that those things are there when they're walking by. So,
yeah, and after a while they don't care.
yep. Eventually they
About it,
get, yep. Eventually it's like creek crossings and stuff like that. I got a camera set up on a horse tank and stuff that's got, water in it. And yeah, they look and look and look. And then eventually they're like, oh yeah, okay. Yep. I'm a movie star now. I'll get a picture. Good buddy of mine down in Kansas, Clint, a guy who goes to Texas with us, bow fishing and stuff. He used to live around here. His dad still lives up here, but he lives down in Kansas, and he was chasing a big deer down in Kansas and chased it for 3 years. And this deer was an absolute movie star. I mean, the first deer, we had all kinds of pictures of it. It was about 160-inch deer the first year. Tried to get it killed with his archery. And in Kansas, things are a little different. It's one buck, period. You could kill it with archery, you can kill it with a gun, whatever, but it's one buck. That's it. So you have to make your choice. Well, first year, he couldn't get it killed at 160 inches probably. Well, then the next year, this deer blew up. And I estimate him to be about 204 inches the next year. I mean, this deer just absolutely got ridiculous. He had forked tines on both his G2s were forked, big double brow tine, 14, 15-inch tines on him on his G2s and his G3s. Just absolutely incredible deer. And had this deer so many times on camera, and work took him out of the area for a while, and he just couldn't get out to hunt it as much. And he did not want to shoot it with a gun. He was just adamant that he was not going to shoot this with a rifle. Or muzzleloader. So he just stuck to his guns and had cameras out to the end of the year. And that deer made it 2 years ago. Well, then ends up that we're kind of waiting the next year for pictures on the camera and stuff. And all of a sudden we get a picture in June of this deer, and this deer, same deal, blew up again. And deer, we didn't get many more pictures. We went from June till August without getting another picture of the deer. Then finally another 1 or 2 pictures in August. And then it wasn't until October that we got a picture. We thought maybe, EHD had killed the deer or something like that. And this deer had blown up even more. And I estimated him to be about 215. And I'll be son of a gun, October 27th, Clint killed that deer with his bow, shot him at literally 5 yards, walking underneath his tree stand, following a coyote out of the woods, shot him absolutely perfect, and ended up the deer scored 214 and some change. And it made was an inset on the cover of North American Whitetail. You got a big write up in North American Whitetail with the deer. So it was just incredible to, see stuff like that. He calls me up. I'm out at Vala's, out of the pumpkin patch with my daughter. And he goes, I just shot him. He texted me, and I'm like, you're kidding me. And he's like, I'm literally stopped in the middle of Vala's, everybody walking around us and stuff like that. And I'm like, I told my wife, I says, oh my God, Clint just shot Forky. And he's like, what? And I'm waiting for his response. He goes, yes, I really did. And I'm like, okay, we're leaving here. So we packed kids up then and finished the rest through Vala's. And I drove down to Kansas City and ended up going down there, and we took pictures and had some beverages of choice, sitting there looking at the deer and reminiscing. And yeah, it was a 3-year quest after that deer, but it was pretty incredible. Pretty incredible.
That's pretty good that he was able to get after following it for so long.
Yep.
And it's like it disappeared and then come back and
ended up finding out finally that this deer was traveling about 2 miles from where, he ended up finding a gentleman that actually had pictures of this deer a couple miles away. So it was just an incredible story just to figure out some of the patterns of this deer and how that all worked through trail cameras and just, talking to other hunters and, because obviously a deer that big wasn't going unnoticed necessarily either, So there was more than one guy hunting that deer. So
yeah, it just turned out that he was the lucky one to get it
in the right place at the right time. He passed up a 165-inch deer the night before that. He just had the deer at 8 yards and just said no. He says, I know Forky, the big deer, is out here, and he says, I'm going to wait. And by gosh, he goes out the next night and kills the deer the next night. It just, could have shot that other deer and been ecstatic with a 165-inch deer, but ends up holding up, sticking to his guns, and actually kills a 215-inch deer then. So
yeah, if that's what you're going after, don't settle for anything less. That's the way she does.
Nope. But by the same token, Roy, I've told 1,000 people that a deer with a bow is a trophy in itself. I don't a doe or a spike or anything. My heart gets going just as much with when I tell my wife I'm going to try to bring a doe home tonight. My heart's racing just the same as if it's a 200-inch deer.
Yeah, there's just something about archery that any doe is, or any deer is a trophy, because it takes a lot of skill and practice.
Yes,
you get the skill to do it.
That is for sure. A lot of skill, a lot of patience and practice and everything like that. It's a lot different being able to get a deer within 20 yards than it is 200 yards.
Right. I talked to I think it was Jack Frost. He was up north. He was doing the big plan thing. And so it asked him one time, what's the difference between a gun hunter and a bow hunter? And he says, the time you spend hunting. It's a pre-trip. It's the same amount of time. You have to figure out where you're going, learn the area, and you get out there and you hunt. After you kill the animal, it's the same amount of work, no matter what you killed it with. With a rifle, like you said earlier, you might get out there first day. It's like, ooh, that's a nice one. Shoot, you're done in a few minutes to a few hours. With a bow, it's like it's too far away. Like you talked about that one that you got. It's like you got to work, 3 days later, you're still trying to, you're still hunting for 3, 4 days.
Yep.
And you finally get your shot, and that's the difference, is how long it takes you to get to your deer.
Yep. That's exactly right. Exactly. So
I've asked several rifle hunters, like, have you shot any deer under 100 yards? And I'll say, no. Once in a while you'll find one to say yes. It's like, oh,
mhm.
shot any under 50? Oh, no. I'm just now getting excited.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Exactly.
My first year was 40 yards, and I've never shot one that far since. It's always been, well, I try to set up for 20-yard shots, but they're normally 10 yards or less. That's where I normally get.
Yep. Especially here in eastern side of this state, shooting my deer around here. Boy, I'll tell you what, if it's much over 20 yards, I'm just like, yeah, there's too much stuff going on out here. There's a lot of trees, and I don't want to track this thing forever. And I'm pretty deadly inside of 20 yards. And if I'm patient enough, I can usually, they will make a mistake. Maybe not the first night, but maybe the second night or the third night, I'll get a chance at them, inside of 20 yards and make a great shot and be able to bring some home, some meat then.
Yeah. That's what it's, what we're doing it for, is get out there and spend some time outside. And I've got a couple of properties. They're not the best, but we're going to work on getting them a little better. And
yep,
I know there's deer in there, is just get them through at the right time.
Oh yeah. Yep. I try to help out. I do a little thermal coyote hunting. I've got a thermal, so I do a little coyote hunting. So that's trying to help my properties out that way. And that's always another little thing I can help out and try to make things a little better that way. So that's been another kind of cool thing that I've gotten into lately too. So
yeah, we at night, it's not unusual for us to hear coyotes howling, sometimes
Yep.
2-3 different directions.
Yep. I have a trail cam picture of a doe fighting a coyote this year already. And I'm sure that she had a fawn there, that she was just trying to protect a fawn. And it's overlooking a food plot, and this coyote was out in the food plot, and the doe was out in the food plot, and she's facing right at this coyote. She's not backing down from it. So I'm guessing she's trying to protect one of her fawns or something,
Yeah. Well, they kill a lot of deer.
Yeah. Yep. That's for sure. So,
and I'd rather have more deer than coyotes.
That's exactly right. That's for sure. Yep.
Yeah, I see, some of the videos once in a while, somebody doing the night shooting of the coyotes and pigs and stuff. And
yep.
You got to have some good area that that your backstop is safe, because around here there is a few houses around here. It's not a lot, but there is a few.
Yep. I've got a buddy who's a seed salesman and chemical rep up in Tacoma up there. And Brett Kazemba, he sells seed and chemical up there. So he knows a lot of the farmers up there. He is very good friends with a lot of the farmers and the fields up there. He knows, a lot of these fields where these coyotes are and where they're having problems. So I go up there and I hunt quite a bit with him with my thermal. And, we'll take an evening and, okay, let's go. And we go start bouncing around through the pastures and fields and going from field to field to field and just trying to do some calling. And we've had a blast up there. We've done really well up there. It's a lot of fun.
Now, do that throughout the summer and stuff as well, or?
Mostly we don't usually get out in the summer, just because the crop fields and stuff like that are still in. It's like, in the middle of the night, you can set up 100 yards from a draw or a CRP field or, a someplace where the deer are. And I can go set out right out in the middle of a picked bean field then. And I'll call those coyotes right out into the middle of a picked bean field. And, at midnight, they can't see me, but I can see them still.
Yeah.
So it works out well. It's pretty cool. And it's really a cool thing too, from a scouting perspective for deer, just to use my thermal scouting. Like right now with all the velvet, you can see all of their horns now, plain as day with the velvet now. So.
Oh yeah, because the blood running through there is a heat signature.
Yep. And so picture of a deer at night right now is absolutely shines like a neon sign right now. So you can see the bucks, count the points, everything like that out in the middle of the night right now. So
yeah, that's kind of cool. I've been wanting to get some of the coyotes gone from the one property because there's a den right there that we come across, and
Oh, okay. Yep.
it sure looks like a den, and
Yep.
I get lots of coyotes walking around off all the cameras, and
Hmm.
just need to get rid of some of those, get the deer in there.
Oh,
The farmer said, "Oh, I haven't seen any deer in quite a while." It's like, yeah, well, they're
yeah,
just not coming through when you're up. They're coming
that's
through
right.
when you're sleeping. Like how
That is right.
lots of them.
Yep. Um, but so yeah, it's but yeah, I everything outdoors. My license plates say fish and hunt, and that is not far from the truth there. I get out and I do it all outdoors. So
Well, if I go by and I see a plate that says fish and hunt, I'm gonna have to honk at you and wave at you.
yep, definitely. So yeah, I've had them plates for a lot of years, and it's I get out and do it all. It's I scored a deer for the guy in Omaha that has hunt and fish. And it was funny because we actually, once our plates had to be renewed, we actually swapped plates. So I have a fish and hunt plate and a hunt and fish plate that's actually his. So I got it on my wall. That's pretty cool.
Oh,
So
yeah, that'd be kind of cool. It's like hunt and fish and hunt and
yep,
swap plates. See that's kind of cool.
yep, yep. So but,
Yeah, that's kind of interesting.
yep,
Yeah,
yep,
I know a couple of guys that I used to work with because in Sarpy County and La Vista, it's 59 county.
yep.
And he said there's many times that he went out, knocked on the door if I can, see if he can hunt there. And the guy would look out and look at his plates.
Oh
He'd
yeah,
know because it was 59, it wasn't a one or a two, he got the hunt.
yep. That's where I hunt out by Valentine. That is exactly, if you have Omaha plates, you just as well keep right on driving. It's
Fortunately, I got a 6 plate. So
yep. Yep. But yeah, with my fish and hunt, I, go up and knock on the door and talk with them. And they're like, oh, well, who are you hunting on? Well, I'm hunting over there on John's ground. Oh, John's letting you hunt? Oh, well, if John's letting you hunt, yeah, sure. That's no problem. Go ahead and you can hunt my property too then. So, but yep, it's just a different story out there. They're looking at license plates and they want you to talk to them for a couple hours out there. You
no problem, right?
That's right. I got plenty of stories. We'll go in and we'll chat about the weather or cattle or anything like that. Just as long as you let me hunt, I'm good with that.
Well, and I just with a couple of guys that every season, crop season, there's 4 or 5 of them that go help the farmer out, bring the crops in,
Yep.
and it's like, hey, I've had some. It's like, hey, when you get ready to do this, let me know. I'll
Yep.
come on and help you. They never call you. Most of them don't
Yeah.
ever call you, but
I know.
it's like, hey, I'll come out and help. I'm getting
Yep.
older. I can't physically do as much as I used to, but I'm going to do whatever I can.
That's right. That's right. So, yep.
Well, it's been a lot of fun talking with you. You got some amazing stories, and I'm sure we're going to hear some more stories someday. But
Yep.
I'm sure we'll run into each other one of these days.
Definitely. Yep. So, and say if anybody's out and about on July 25th, come on down to Bellevue. We've got that youth bow fishing we're going to do that night, and do a little with the Nebraska Game and Parks, do a little bit of mentoring with that. So yeah, if somebody wants to come on down, check out a boat for bow fishing and stuff, yeah, swing on down.
Yeah, you can just go to Nebraska's Game and Park website. I think it's Outdoor Nebraska.
Yes. Yep. I think that's where it is. Yep. And they've got kind of a schedule as to where they're going to be, because they do it the youth the fishing free fishing nights, or youth fishing nights. I just did one up at Benson Lake about a week ago, and was up there and I did one, and we had quite a few people out. I took 2 little girls out, and they each caught one caught a bullhead and one caught a little bluegill, so they were all excited about that. So but yeah, it's just check out the Game Parks website, and might see some people around.
Yeah. So how is the fish not at Benson Park? Been many years since I've been there.
A few little fish, not a whole lot, and the water was about 95 degrees out there, I think, and And the little girls I was with, they were more interested in getting in the water than actually fishing, I think. So
Yeah,
I did keep them entertained long enough that they were each able to catch a fish. So they caught one bullhead and one little bluegill. So they were all happy. They were excited.
yeah. Well, that may be all it takes to get them hooked.
That's right. That's right. So, but
Well, it's been great talking with you. Amazing stories. Just so exciting to hear some of your stories you had. Is something I would have never thought a dream up of making up that kind of a story. Yet it happened to you, and
yep. So,
that's always the good part, is when you hear these stories that are different, and it's a lot of fun hearing all these stories and just talking archery.
yep. That's why I say that's why I got into scoring the deer for Pope and Young and Boone and Crockett and those guys, was just to be able to have people come over to the house and hear the stories. That's what I love it. So
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and we'll have to do this again someday. And
definitely anytime.
yeah, well, it's been great talking with you. My name is Rory Canterbury. I've been your host on Arch Talk 101, and we'll see everybody on the next one. So stay tuned and follow the podcast and let us know what you think.